The snow outside your window has been falling for 3 days straight. You're bored. You've refreshed every app twice. But somewhere in your bones, there's an old memory of what this season used to mean. Winter used to be the most dangerous stretch of the entire year. No hunting, no harvest, no fresh food arriving tomorrow. Just months of waiting, in the cold, with whatever you'd managed to save. And the way your ancestors survived that waiting says more about what makes you human than almost anything else they ever did. You think of winter as an inconvenience. They thought of it as a test. For most of human history, food wasn't something you kept in a box in your kitchen. It was something you found, chased, or grew, day by day, season by season. And when winter came, all three of those options nearly disappeared at once. Animals migrated or went into hiding. Plants died back or froze solid. The ground itself locked shut. So what did your ancestors actually do with months of no hunting, no gathering, and nowhere to go? The answer isn't what most people expect. They didn't just huddle and wait to die. They planned for it, sometimes for years in advance, in ways that changed the entire trajectory of the human brain. Archaeologist Brian Hayden has spent decades studying hunter-gatherer societies, and his research points to something surprising. Winter wasn't just survived, it was, in a strange way, engineered. Hayden's work on delayed return economies shows that some of the earliest evidence of long-term human planning, smoking meat, drying fish, storing nuts and roots, comes directly from groups preparing for a season they knew was coming, sometimes months before the first snowfall. Think about what that actually requires. You have to imagine a version of yourself that doesn't exist yet. Cold, hungry, months from now. And then you have to make sacrifices today for that future person you'll never actually meet as your current self. This is called delayed gratification, and it's one of the rarest cognitive skills in the animal kingdom. Most animals can't do this at all. A squirrel burying nuts looks like planning, but researchers have found it's mostly instinct, not conscious foresight. Your ancestors were doing something different. They were running a mental simulation of a future they hadn't lived yet, and organizing their entire present around it. Psychologist Walter Mischel became famous for studying delayed gratification in children in what's now called the marshmallow test. Children who could resist eating one marshmallow now in exchange for 2 marshmallows later tended to show better outcomes years down the line in areas like academic performance and emotional regulation. Mischel's research suggested that the ability to wait, to sacrifice now for later, wasn't just a personality trait. It was a skill, one that could be trained and strengthened. Winter was the original marshmallow test, and it lasted for months, not minutes. But planning ahead was only half the problem. The other half was even stranger. What do you do with your mind for weeks at a time when there's genuinely nothing left to hunt, nothing left to gather, and no work to fill the hours? This is where something remarkable happened. Anthropologists studying preserved winter camps have found enormous concentrations of art, storytelling, tool decoration, and ritual, far more than during the busy months of spring and summer. Winter wasn't empty time. It became the incubator for culture itself. Researcher Polly Wiesner conducted a study on the Juhuanzi people of the Kalahari, comparing their daytime conversations to their nighttime fireside conversations. During the day, when there was work to do, conversation was mostly practical. Complaints, coordination, gossip about who did what. But at night, especially in the long, idle hours, the topic shifted dramatically towards storytelling, roughly 80% of it. Wiesner's research suggests something profound. When your ancestors had nothing left to do but sit together in the dark, their minds didn't shut down. They turned toward each other, and toward story. Not because it was entertaining, though it was that too, but because story does something practical. It transmits values, warnings, history, and social bonds, all without anyone having to directly lecture anyone else. You still do this, right now. Every time you're bored, truly bored, with nothing to scroll and nothing to fix, your brain doesn't go quiet. It reaches for story, for connection, for something to turn the empty hours into meaning. This is the twist most people never realize about their own winters or their own boredom. That restless, itchy feeling you get when there's nothing to do isn't a malfunction. It's the exact same ancient mechanism that once turned freezing, foodless months into the birthplace of language, myth, and shared identity. Boredom wasn't punishment. It was the pressure that pushed your ancestors to invent culture, because survival required something for the mind to do once the body had nothing left to do. There's another layer to this that's easy to miss. Thus, winter camps, out of pure necessity, forced people into closer physical proximity for longer stretches than any other season. Multiple families crowded into fewer shelters, sharing fire, sharing food stores, sharing the long nights. Researchers studying seasonal round patterns in hunter-gatherer groups have found that winter aggregation, not the busy independence of summer, is where many of the deepest social bonds, alliances, and even marriages were formed. In other words, the season with the least freedom to move produced some of the strongest bonds to stay. That's not a coincidence. Enforced closeness, when survival depends on cooperation, tends to build trust faster than casual contact ever could. Your ancestors didn't choose to be crowded together all winter, but the fact that they had no choice may be exactly what made those bonds so durable. So the next time winter drags on, and the days blur together, and boredom starts creeping in around the edges, you're not experiencing a broken version of downtime. You're experiencing the same ancient pressure that once pushed a freezing, hungry species toward planning, patience, storytelling, and each other. Your ancestors didn't get through winter by fighting the stillness. They got through it by turning the stillness into something. Into meat smoked months in advance. Into a story told by firelight. Into bonds forged simply because there was nowhere else to be. The snow outside your window will keep falling for a while yet. You'll refresh your apps a few more times, but somewhere underneath that boredom is the same old pressure your ancestors felt. The pressure that once built culture out of nothing but cold, dark, empty time. Winter never actually asked you to survive it alone. It never has.